And here we are again. Hello everybody, welcome back to the First Layer, the show that explores the world of 3D printing. You may know me as Brian, but I tend to be MIA lately, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of fun stuff going on. Richard, unfortunately, is ill today, down with the, I guess I can say down with the sickness. I don't know exactly what, but I wish him the best. Hopefully he's feeling better today. Let's see who we got with us today. I'm just going to quickly hop through our chat here. We got DeWitt3D, who was keen to be there at the regular time. Apologies to my YouTube friends. I posted to Facebook, but I don't have the login credentials quite working yet for the First Layer, which is why this was happening today, if you will. But thank you for joining our good friend Tim there, Snapshot FPV, Dominic Versetto, Ben Brady, Rex Waldy the Scarecrow, Dwayne King, and Robert 954. Oh, there's more chat there. There it is. Accord XDC, David Sell. Hi, Non-Fam. Yeah. Oh, is my audio coming in super hot, guys? Sorry. Let me know if I'm peaking out. Let me just check here. Sorry, I just recalibrated everything, so hopefully it's, as long as it's not, you know, maxing out, then I'm a happy camper. Does it sound wavy for you guys? Because I know I had that happen the other day. I apologize. I'm going to break my cardinal rule here. I'm going to go to YouTube and actually listen to myself, but it's on the speakers right now, so I am so sorry. In the meantime, of course it's just story. Technology, guys. It can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. One moment. I don't even have a please stand by thing here, so I'm just going to go on mute. Stand by. Okay, let's try that. Can you guys give me a thumbs up and let me know if that is better or worse? Worst case, we can switch over to a couple of backup mics I got here. But, yeah, if you want my candid response for the week, I bought this Motu a long time ago, this audio interface, and you can see it's working okay. Like, we're getting our levels here. It has a lot of weird audio issues, and it's a shame because I like it for the display, but I think my audio is not that great. But anyways, I'll get that fixed in the future. I do have my mixing board back here, but I haven't had a chance to rehook it all up. Maybe later today. Yeah, please let me know, guys, if it's unbearable, actually. Yeah, let's wing it for now. If it is becoming unbearable, let me know and I'll switch the mics there. Just saw Dominic Versetto. My Pi 02W arrived. Going to try with Octoprint and Pi camera tomorrow. That is awesome. Here, I'll tell you what, guys. I'll pull this down a little bit. Maybe that'll help a little bit. The Pi Zero, the new one, for those of you who don't follow this, the Pi 0W, or Pi 02W, sorry, these names get longer and longer each iteration. Basically, they've now brought the higher processing power of the Pi 3 and the Pi 4 onto the Pi 0 form factor. You know, usually I'm really good for having a random Pi sitting at this desk. Let's see if I've got one here in my bucket of goodies. I am in the process of cleaning, so obviously there's stuff everywhere here. There we go. There's a couple of Pi Zeros. Alright, so, previous generation, okay? Let me be clear. This, and sorry, it's not going to focus because mine is the fixed focus camera we're looking at right now, but this guy here is good, but not powerful enough, usually, to run Octoprint, especially as it's grown. So when Octoprint first came out, there was a lot of folks who said, well, why can't I run it on a Zero? And the reason is because up until this past generation, and I'd have to look at this one to be sure, I'm pretty sure this is still the single core variant. Now, in the, the whole reason we use Raspberry Pis is because it's a very efficient little microcomputer that is way faster than any kind of microprocessor you could buy on the market, like the STM32s and, the LPC chips and all that. They all run at, maximum maybe 160 megahertz, while the Pi starts at 1 gigahertz, and because, we could get into the whole thing about real-time operating systems versus scheduled and all that. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, faster is better. Now, the Zero is capable of running Octoprint, but you can't run any cameras or anything like that until now. This new version of the Pi will now allow, I think it's quad-core. I apologize, I haven't ordered one yet, which is unusual for me. But this new one should be more than capable of running just straight up a printer. When it comes to having the camera, maybe I find it's, you know, sure it can do it, but I'm more in favor of reserving processing power to ensure my G code executes in a timely manner, rather than sitting and having, you know, issues pop up on the print quality and blips just so I can have a pretty camera. For that side, for the printer camera, and actually, again, I apologize, guys, because I'm winging this today, but I just have one of these in specifically for the printer. I've installed 2 of them outdoors, and I can tell you it's a game changer. But Wyze. I've spoke about Wyze in the past. As you may know, I have Wyze cams all over the place, and this is the V2, which has, you know, black and white night vision, all that. This guy has changed the game altogether. This is the Wyze Cam V3. And one of the features it has is what they call color night vision. I haven't looked into the technology on how they do it, but holy smokes, is it a game changer for night vision. The quality of the image is way better. I've been able to shoot the stars off my back porch in color. Unfortunately, I kind of missed the Aurora Borealis bloom that happened a week ago, but I did catch a little bit of it on my front porch cam. And when it comes to printing, apart from having, you know, a focus knob so you can go in super close on macro mode, it is the best when it comes to monitoring it. And we're going to cover these a little bit more in the future when I actually have some more time to work on them. But yes, I exclusively use these to watch my printer now, and I highly encourage, if you're looking into something for it, you can't beat Wyze. Let's see what else is going on here. I'm just catching up on your comments here. Tim, you killed your... How did you kill a Pi 4, my friend? Okay, bring it by me. I'll see if I can repair it for you, but that's pretty painful. And indeed, you know, I'll have a ride down with my Chevy at the levee to mourn your Raspberry Pi. But yeah, just so you guys know as well too, Pis, they're not hard to damage. It doesn't take a lot to blow regulators. And you know why I'm excited about this new Pi is because it uses way less power. You know, there's a lot less components on the board to power, and so therefore you can power it in lower places. The Raspberry Pi Foundation is a charitable organization for educating children, and because of that, they focus on keeping the price of the Pi units low. They have a deal with Broadcom to mass manufacture the chips at a good rate because they are a not-for-profit charity, and so you get basically an amazing level of performance, and the things you can do with it are far superior to what even the Pi Foundation originally thought they could do back in, I want to say it's 2014 or so. I've got a photo somewhere of the first Raspberry Pi. I think I was the first person in Calgary to have one. I had to order it. I ordered one from Farnell and one from RS Components back before it was all Element 13 and all that stuff, or Element 14, but either way, I've been using the Pis exclusively for tons of projects since day one, and they are a great little piece of hardware, but, you know, just unfortunately with the latest changes, I haven't had a chance to catch up on all these changes. Cortex, you're saying you had a Wyze V3 and switched to the new Nest Cam battery that I hardwired the 2 I have outside. How are you liking that? I haven't played much with the Nest cameras. I kind of bought a little bit into the Wyze Cam infrastructure. It's just the V3 is such a game changer. You know, I've got the doorbell. I'm not going to get any of their other IoT stuff like switches. It doesn't make any sense. And if you're wondering what I'm cracking here, yes, it's nothing fun or exciting, but, you know, 'tis the season, apparently. Remembrance Day for us, and I think it's Veterans Day for the Americans. Came and flew by, so we've now got cranberry ginger ale back on the market, and everyone's playing Christmas songs, and it's kind of killing me inside. Oh, the Wi-Fi stopped working, Tim? Yeah, bring it by me sometime. There's actually, the Wi-Fi is one of the easiest circuits on there, and I can see if we can salvage it there. Regardless, remember, with the Pi, you can buy a USB dongle, and you got 4 more ports. You can just buy a Wi-Fi dongle, and it'll just work for the majority of them. I think there's a Realtek 8192 chipset or something. Just look at it on Amazon for like $5. It's just a USB dongle, and then your Wi-Fi will get working again. You know, save you a few bucks. What else we got here? Got Pi 02 this week. Well, I had to buy a bunch of stuff. I really don't need to make the $12 ship. Oh yeah, you're in Canada. You bought from BuyAPi, didn't you? Or what are they called now? Pi Shop. Yeah, $12 minimum shipping kind of sucks on those. And then they limit you to 1 per unit. So I understand for supply and demand, but if a thing costs $12, I hate spending $12 in shipping. So I don't know. I feel like maybe they should let you buy 3 and still pay the $12 shipping. At least you feel like you're not getting as ripped off. So yeah, $20 for a Pi 02W versus $40 for a Pi 4. Well, or $140 for a Pi 4. Let me talk about that for a moment. So Pi 4 comes in a couple variants, right? And it's all based off additional processor memory, similar to a RAM upgrade, if you will, right? It goes anywhere from the 1 gigabyte model up to, I think it's 8 gigs is max now. You don't need that much. In fact, 1 gig is still more than enough to run most of Octoprint and cameras and everything like that. 2 gigs is nice to have that little overhead. 4 and above, I would only ever buy one like that, pardon me, if you were running 3 or 4 printers off one Pi, in which case I would also call you an idiot. Don't do that, please. I know you can, but it makes no sense, especially when these things only draw, 10 watts of power. Just go buy. If you look at the pricing too, it's pretty surprising when you realize, you can buy a Pi 4 8 gig for like $140, or you can buy, I don't know, $47 each. I think you're gonna get similar processing power. Okay, so Ben. Okay, so never seen a Pi for $35. They've always been more. Okay, so yes, that is kind of the bane of the existence of the Pi. But I'm going to share some tips with you guys when you're buying Pis. Okay, so first and foremost, the Raspberry Pi Foundation has agreements with a couple of distributors around the world who manufacture the Pi. Okay, so if we go way back to the first days. I really wish I still had the photos I could show you guys, but you could actually tell there was different iterations of the same Raspberry Pi board, that they were all the same silk screen, well, not the same silk screen, but they were all the same board layout, parts, etc. But one of them would be stamped and said, built by RS Components, and the other one would say built by Farnell or Element 14 or whatever. Because in the early days, the Raspberry Pi Foundation did not have their own manufacturing lines, so they went and said, all right, MSRP for this is $35. Build as many as you can, but you have to sell it at $35. So if you go to Element, let me just check these guys. Element 14. I haven't been on their site recently, but community migration. Oh, cool. Well, that's a bad example. Okay, let's go to RS Components then. RS Components is out of the UK, for those of you who are aware. So it is more expensive to import into the US, but just trying to see if I can find North America, Canada, and we'll see if we can share this screen here. Just bear with me a moment, guys. Oh, yeah, they're now called Allied Electric. Share screen. Screen 1. Let's see if this comes through okay. Alright, so here's Allied Electronics. If we look up Raspberry Pi, assuming they have them in stock. I haven't checked recently, chip shortages, all that good stuff. Pi 400, you want to look into the boards, right? And if we go down to just the base board, let's see, there's the compute module add-on boards. Here's the Raspberry Pi A, B Series 2, B Series 1. You have to kind of know what you're looking for here. So here's a Raspberry Pi 3, for instance. And here is more 3s. We might find the 4s down here, I apologize. But, yeah, here we go. Okay, so the Pi 4, this is in Canadian, sorry, this is in American dollars, I think. Yeah, so the Canadian price for a Pi 4 8 gig is $100 through Allied Electronics here. And again, these are one of the companies that manufacture them, right? So you can see right now they're just right off the rocker. They're not anticipating seeing these in the next few months. But, and this is what I'm trying to get at, is, you know, the base model is always supposed to be $35. So if we go down and find down here, where is it? 97. And some of them aren't manufacturing the 1 gig model. So I'm going to tell you right now, it's okay to buy a Pi 3. In fact, that's what I use exclusively for mine, is Pi 3s. And you can tell if it's a Pi 3, just FYI, that over the processor you have this little metal shroud, and you have this little stamped aluminum shell over the Wi-Fi that's got the Raspberry Pi logo in it. As long as it's got something like that, the newer Pis, obviously, they've changed over to be USB Type-C and so forth. But if you're ever buying a Pi and you're not sure and you can't read the little Raspberry Pi 3 Model B Plus information up here, just look for that metal shroud. Either way, what I'm trying to get at here, guys, is if you go to any of the companies that make the board, okay, that actually manufacture it, when they get them in stock here, $45 Canadian, okay? Go to US, $35 US. That's the going price, and that's where you paid. If you go to anybody other than Allied Electronics or Element 14, you're not going to find them at that price. But if you're looking for, you know, local distributors that are authentic, go to the Raspberry Pi website. Go to their hardware here, and if we find, let's say, Model B, buy it now. So it only comes in a 2 gig model. That's why it's a bit more expensive, just FYI. But if you go in here, let's say Canada, I've got Canakit is the official distributor in Canada. If we go to United States, you've got SparkFun, PiShop.us, which is actually related to the Canadian Pi Shop. Micro Center is a big one. Micro Center pretty much sells everything at price. So if I go and let's say, I used to go to the one in Houston when I was doing business trips here. They're sold out in store. Like, you have to go to the stores to check. But again, $34.99 a unit. If you try and buy more than one, it actually goes up in price. So go there and buy one, and especially the Pi Zeros. I love to go to Micro Center, and unfortunately we don't have one within 12 hours here or so. But regardless, you know, yeah, Pi shopping is tricky. I apologize if I went on a tangent there about that, but if you go and find the official distributors on raspberrypi.org, you will find it at that price point. It might be before shipping, but if you can find a way to pick up one in store where you don't have to pay for that shipping, or there are, I don't want to say buy accessories because that's where the markups really occur, but if you want to buy other components for your circuits, things you want to build, like if you want to get a better quality USB cable to go from the Pi to the printer, which we recommend, group that all together just to reduce the impact of that shipping. Just catching up here, guys. World Planet Gadget. Here we go. I can actually hit show here. What's the biggest 3D project you've made, and what is the number? The number 1 3 print. Sorry, I'm not following that today. So the biggest project I have that's still in progress, but because I keep, frankly, screwing up some of my printers here, is I'm taking Goose Anguon's Falcon 9 model and printing it at 300%. It's about 1 kilo per segment, but the Falcon 9 will be about 10 feet tall when it's done. We have Sauron's Tower in our living room, which Jess previously printed. That's 7 or 8 feet tall. We wrap Christmas lights around it, and that's our Christmas tree. So a little bit festive there for that. And then apart from that, a lot of different helmets. Master Chief helmets, Halo helmets. We printed a Cyberman head for one of our local friends who's a big Doctor Who fan. Eventually I want to work on a Dalek, I want to work on an R2-D2, but it's just been dialing the machines in, getting some time. I had a lot of business trips, unfortunately, towards the end of this year. Let's see, Starlight Technology is great. Talking about these, you know, I'm glad. Thank you for mentioning Max CJ. Starlight. I didn't know the verbiage of what they were calling it there, because the last time I was looking into actual technologies was with microphones with what they called far field for wide audio range, but I didn't know they. Yeah, Starlight cameras. I guess that's just the new CC TV technology, maybe? Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to look more into that because maybe I can find something fancier. I'm just going to bring this one up real quick. Thank you, Tim. DigiKey shipping for 2 Pi Zeros was $8. Yes, I'm a very, very big advocate for DigiKey. And the reason is because it's the only company I've dealt with where I can order pretty much anything from their catalog in stock and have it delivered to me next day. FedEx International Priority from, I want to say it's Kansas. I'm probably wrong where it's coming from. But overnight, no import fees, and it's $8 flat rate shipping. So Tim, if you're telling me, and I'm gonna look on DigiKey, I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot for this because if they have them now, you got to make me buy them, right? I buy all of my electronic components for my printers from DigiKey. Why? Because there's like no minimum quantities on a lot of items, and like if you need one resistor, you know, sometimes it's actually cheaper to buy one resistor from DigiKey, pay the $8 shipping, than it is to buy it from a brick and mortar store in some towns. Just saying, I love it. Amin Baines, hi everyone. Hey, my friend, how are you doing today? Amin, for those of you who don't know, is the owner, the man behind the action, if you will, at Matter 3D, and he has some filament coming my way this week that I'm very excited to try. One of which is their new PETG carbon fiber. And if you go onto our Facebook page, Amin's posted a couple of photos of it coming out of the line. I am doing a video on it because I've noticed there's a lot of skepticism, shall we say, in relation to carbon fiber and how it works in filament. I've seen definitely a few threads this week talking about, carbon fiber's strength comes in its, organized nanotube structure versus flakes in it, and does it really make a difference? So that's what we're going to be playing around with here. Still trying to think of a few tests because the weather is kind of fluctuating, so I don't want to be driving over tires and popping them and have snowfall and all that. Des Logos 3D Printing. Who has the link to get a Pi 20W? I'm just seeing who has them in stock, to be honest. I hadn't looked at it before the show today. But let's see. So, let's see. The Pi Zero. Wow, they're a little expensive at DigiKey. They're $20 each. That's not bad, but for those of you who are in Canada, now bear in mind I don't know the U.S. sites, so you're gonna have to trust me that the U.S. site is similar. But if we go, if I can bring this up here, here's pieshop.ca. They used to be called BuyAPi, and these are kind of my go-to guys. I guess it is $18.95. Okay, maybe that is the Canadian list price. In which case, it's actually a better deal, because number one, they're out of stock, so that's not going to help our American friends. But these guys charge like $12 minimum shipping, right? Whereas, and I'm sure it's going to be gone before the end of the show, so I'm going to maybe put 2 in there. Sorry. But, yeah, they're running low on stock right now. But you can see, I don't know if it's going to show the estimate here. Yeah, it's not going to show the estimate right now, but it's $8, so $48 will get me 2 Pi Zeros. I suppose I have talked a little bit about it, but for those of you who don't know about what this chip shortage means, it doesn't mean that necessarily that, you go to a store and it's anything with a microchip on it's empty. But the problem is for a plethora of reasons we won't even get into, every component on one of these little boards has to be made, has to be manufactured. And, there's obsoleting in the technology realm when you're developing a product is a nightmare to begin with. And what's happened during this big wave is that there are no components available. The fab houses are not able to keep up with the demand. Some of them took the last year to do an upgrade to produce newer components, and when companies are coming forward saying I need another 40,000 of this older component, a lot of them are saying no. So then you got to go and redesign your product, and if you're a good company like the Pi Foundation, you'll go and change your version number so you know that something changed, versus some 3D printer companies who like to go and rehash their boards and give them the same product numbers. So either way, chips are hard to get a hold of right now. It's also very hard to get consumer electronics, and also items that are a bit more niche. Like the Raspberry Pi, they're not producing 10 million a day, right? So the fact that it hasn't shot up in price 3 or 4-fold is a little surprising to me, but yeah, you're going to have to hunt around. I mean, your best bet, if you really want to get that new one, just pay the small fee and pick it up locally. For myself, what I do is, I don't know if they're still listing them, but Memory Express here in Canada carried Raspberry Pi for a while. And the good thing was they used to price match, but with everything being out of stock right now, I don't know. Yeah, like they're not too bad price. The Raspberry Pi 4, if I bring this up here, Memory Express has them for 112. I don't oh, they're sold out across the board. There's one in Ottawa, if one of you guys wants to run to Ottawa and fight somebody for it. But the limited availability, you can see it's mostly all accessories these days. So it's not a bad time to consider, you know, sticking with a Pi 3 if you have one. A Pi 2 even is good enough. Pi 1, no, it's getting a little dated for that. But if you can get a Pi 2 or a Pi 3 from someone for, I don't know, 40 bucks, including a charger, or even 50 if you're desperate, it's worth it. You can run old PCs for things like Octoprint, but I haven't covered it for a reason. It's too much of a headache. What do we got down here? Oh yeah, Max CJ, you're kind of ahead of me on this one. It's why I buy thin clients and put Ubuntu on them, but some are more powerful than the Pi. Absolutely, I have down here one of my many virtualized systems. It's just a little Lenovo unit. You know, you can get these for, you know, from e-recyclers for a couple $100 sometimes. It's a bit bigger than a Pi. You have to make sure you're running Linux is the key with Octoprint. And we'll talk again a bit more about that in the future as we dive back into that there. So Sansa, great question. The Pi Zero comes with wireless, not like the Zero versus the Zero W where it had Wi-Fi and the other not, right? Yes, the Wi-Fi is now standard on all the Pi Zeros. And the way to check, if you are ever buying one, please take this advice from me. The way to tell is look for this little arrow. I don't know if this is going to come through. Okay, here, let me mess with all my focus and stuff on you guys here. There we go. So you see this little arrow over here? That's actually the Wi-Fi antenna. And that's a good way of telling that it's got the Wi-Fi connectivity. It just kind of sits on its own on the edge of the PCB. If you don't see that on there, it doesn't have it. And I'm just looking at the back on mine. Oh yeah, yeah, and this is other, just with the silk screen there, you can see, uses antenna technology licensed. That is a very good sign. Pi Zero, obviously you can see by this finger here, it says W for wireless. And since 2016, so all of these ones here have had that, they've had that same technology. Just look for the arrow and then you'll know for sure it's wireless. Let's see, I'm just catching up on the chat here, guys. Sorry, I'm only 11 minutes behind on the chat. Raymond saying, what are you printing behind you? Well, Doomsday Machine over here. I am printing the Gengar model. Let's see if I have it right here in my history. Ornamental Gengar on Thingiverse. Item number is 5028132. I'll post it to the chat here. Basically, I'm using this to benchmark my printer. So, so it's going through a little bit of a torture test on this one. And you might have seen a bunch of these on Thingiverse's homepage recently here, but I figured it was a good way just to check for micro vibrations and stuff all over a model, regardless of how sacrificial it is. So I posted a link to the chat there if you guys do want to print that one. Let me know how it comes out. I think it would look best in resin, but I'm working on the FDM machines this week, so we'll see if I end up throwing something away. Brian Jackson here. Hey, greetings all. Halfway through a class set of original character prints. Only 14 more to go. Grade 6 kids are very creative. Absolutely. I've been hearing Brian is an instructor in the Airdrie School Division who we've worked with closely. You might have seen him in the rocket videos from, was it last summer? It's hard to tell with time flying. Anyways, we've been working to help get their school going with 3D printing and all that. So it's great to hear those printers are going well there, Brian, and hopefully if you're all right with it, share some of the prints of what the kids designed. So you can probably speak more on it there, but I believe they're using Tinkercad to go and make custom designs in the browser, and that's the coolest thing. I love that you can get young kids now and say, here you go, here's something that we couldn't have done when we were in school. Play around with it, create something, and then physically hold it in your hands afterwards. I had a bit of a moment like that a couple years ago with Sculptress. It's a free program you can download for doing more creative modeling, and Brian, maybe sometime when I'm up your way I can show you that for the kids, because it's more of an artistic approach to make something. And I've got this terrible looking dragon slash bear thing that I printed somewhere that Jess kept, but I designed it in Sculptress, exported it, and printed it, and it printed, so that was kind of cool. Dominic Versetto, great question, my friend. Is there a good reason why I should not try to adapt before on Afterburner hot end assembly to my 8.5? I don't personally see any issues with that. I know that the Afterburner really is just more related to the enclosure around the hot end itself, and so a lot of people use dragon hot ends or mosquitoes and whatnot, and you're getting the benefit out of that hot end. The Afterburner itself is just a nicely assembled template, and I actually did consider it myself on one of my my Ender 5 actually in particular here, but I haven't done it. The reason is because we are going to be putting this matrix extruder here, this knockoff one, on the Ender 5 later this week. I actually just got the I got an Amazon special here by, I can't even remember what company here, just an adapter plate to put it on an Ender 3, Ender 5, whatever. So I'm getting ready to give it a go. Basically all you need to know is whenever you add weight onto an Ender 5, you got to slow down the accelerations you could achieve before. The benefit to a Bowden tube is you're reducing weight on the motion area, but if you start going direct drive and adding all this extra weight in there, just be sure to slow it down or your print quality is going to definitely suffer. Rick Landon, on a Prusa i3, if the printer runs and second layer print far off the center on the right, is ramps bad or Arduino? Okay, so if the first layer prints good and it has trouble on the second, usually that implies to me that you have either the acceleration set too high or you're moving it too quick and it's just basically the motor can't keep up with it. So I wouldn't so much worry about the printer firmware, but if you're using Cura, and this has always been a bane of my thing with Cura, is if you create a blank profile in Cura, it goes and actually pushes out new acceleration values, and I think they're 9,000 millimeters per second squared. Far too fast for an FDM machine. It's basically the equivalent of running without any kind of slowdown or braking on the corners, and that can cause things to continuously layer shift. You might also be printing too fast too, so maybe let us know in the chat what your print speeds are, and if your slicer is pushing out acceleration values. That's the first place I would go related to that. Gary T, BioPi has pretty good pricing. Yeah, they do. Their pricing for the actual hardware is good, but what kills me with them is because of their mandatory $12 shipping rate and limit on 1 unit per person, you can't go and buy 3 of them to reduce your shipping costs. So when you're buying, a $20 board and you have $12 shipping, now you're buying a $32 board, unless you can find another item to disperse the value of that shipping. So usually when I go to someone like them, even if I'm buying, let's say I'm buying a Pi 4, I'm going to throw a Pi 0 in the cart because, it's an extra 12 bucks or whatever, but I'll probably need it down the road, and I'm not having to pay that $12 shipping when I do need it. Let's see what we got here. Oh, you dirty bugger, Tim. Well, it says they have them, and it says they have 2, so we're going to see. Kawasaki here. I will not even try to do the ZX14. Sorry about that. I'm thinking about changing the hot end on one of my ANET to an E3D hot end. Do you know if I'll have to change settings for the different stepper motor that comes with E3D? No, generally. So we're not going to give you an hour-long lecture here on steppers, but the majority of stepper motors are 1.8 degrees per step, 16 microsteps, if you will, normally on the program. Depending on the stepper, you may have to adjust the voltages for its ideal range, but usually not if you're going for the same NEMA 17, 34 millimeter, whatever it is. That being said, if you are changing the extruder, and when we say the extruder, we mean the motorized housing that moves filament. We're not talking about the hot end where filament extrudes out of. The extruder assembly has a gear in there, and the calculated usually 93 steps per millimeter is based off a certain particular style of gear. If you change out to anything on the crazy end, like a matrix extruder where it's got its own gearing ratio in there, or a dual gear extruder, if you will, the assemblies, those numbers will change because it defines how many pulses to that motor it takes to move 1 millimeter of filament. And you know, again, there's a whole bunch of estimates you can do based off different ones. I've done the mathematical route myself and calculated here's your teeth width and all that. It's an absolute mess. You're better off to find someone's baseline and then do your standard flow calculations that we've shown before, where you mark off your filament, you extrude 100 millimeters or so, 120, or I mark it off at 120 millimeters and then extrude 100. And then I can measure the distance and say, okay, that's how much I need to increase or decrease my rate by. I can do a video on it again, but yeah, you shouldn't have to change it if all you're doing is changing out the hot end. The extruder, even if it's the same model, I do recommend recalibrating it, like just kind of fine-tuning it afterwards. But out of the box, it's probably going to be okay. So hopefully that gets you on the right path there. Let's see here. Talk about new boards. The SKR Mini E33. Oh, man. You ever... I don't know. Are you guys old enough to be through the computer technology of watching where suddenly everything got shrouds and it looks like all the cool components are hidden? That's what's going through here. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to Big Tree Tech, they do make a fairly decent board. They're not without problems, but they do make a fairly decent board, all things considered. When you're comparing against players in the same level. We can't be talking about companies like, what are they called there? Like the Duet and things like that. You can't compare against them because it's a whole different manufacturing process, different cost factor, all that. Now, E3 3.0, I have looked over it several times, and here are my thoughts, at least, why I haven't bought one. Number one, I don't see anything major on board design differences between the 2 and the 3. I see physical changes, you know, like the shrouds and stuff to make it look cool, but this is something that is not meant to be sitting out in the open to begin with, so who cares? They're still sticking with STM32 chips. Now, these chips are cheaper than heck, okay? We're talking like $3, $4 for a processor versus an LPC chip or something more brand name. I'm sorry, you know, STM Electronics, but you're not a household name compared to some of these other ones. They're cheap, and I had a lot of computational issues early on with Marlin, especially when they were developing this, what they call the HAL, the hardware extraction layer, to talk to all these different hardwares on the Arduino platform. That kind of burnt me, and I'm probably holding a bit of a vendetta that I shouldn't anymore because it's gotten better. But that being said, I always found the chips were not very stable, especially with things like firmware flashing from SD card, etc. So I didn't look into the specific part number. All I saw really was that it's a variation of the F103 that we used to see, the RET6 with the 512 meg memory. But I haven't looked into the chip itself, but I don't see any major performance differences. And this is where we're getting into the weird place of 3D printing right now, is that these 32-bit boards, and again, I don't have one on hand right now, but they're overpowered for Marlin, but underpowered if they were to run the Clipper equivalent inside their own board instead of on a Raspberry Pi. So at the end of the day, I mean, if you want Clipper, you're going to run Clipper, in which case it doesn't matter what 32-bit or 8-bit board you buy generally. If you want to run Marlin, yeah, 32-bit boards are definitely the way to go now, but I don't know. I burnt through an SKR Pro. I burned through 2 1.4 turbos, and I didn't do anything fancy. So my confidence in Big Tree has definitely been shaken, but I'm not going to discourage you to buy their product. I'm telling you that it's actually the best bang for your buck, and they seem to be the only ones that can get parts to the market right now. So, will I be getting a 3? No, and it's for the same reasons why I wouldn't buy a 2 right now, which is it's designed for Ender 3 retrofits. It's far too limiting for what it can do at this stage, and a V3 I don't think was really necessary whatsoever. That being said, if it's all you can get it, but I would say stick with a, again, normally I would say like a 1.4 or 1.4 turbo that uses an LPC processor, which I found was a lot more stable. But that's just my 2 cents on that. Alright, Snapshot FPV. I suspect my Z-axis isn't moving the correct steps up during a print. What's the best way to confirm and correct? Is it anything like setting extruder steps? Yeah, so if you're on a stock CR10 V3, I haven't looked at the board in a long time, but I have a feeling the 2 motors are operating on a splitter. And you can do it that way. It's just not electrically as consistent. Now, Snapshot, are you finding that your models are printing squished? Or are you finding that one side's lagging, or one side's bumpy and the other looks smoother? That's kind of the critical information to find out what's wrong with the Z. And, we talk about printing these cubes all the time, which I think I literally threw my last one out last night. But the cube is not used just alone for X and Y sizing. It's also used for Z sizing. So I'd like you to print a calibration cube and measure it. And when you measure it, also look at it. If you're seeing that it's consistently banding and bulging at like fixed heights, that says to me probably that it is, your steps are too short, or maybe there's something binding up on the Z rods. It should move smoothly and fluently up and down. And, when you have dual rods and dual motors, there's also, this electrical risk that one coil has a bit of different inductance versus another, and your machine might actually go up like this. And that's when you'll see a lot of inconsistencies in your layer lines versus a consistent. So yes, please print a calibration cube. If you don't trust your slicer, which I completely understand, I don't trust my slicer sometimes too, go to Michael from Teaching Tech's GitHub page for calibration. One of the pages in there, it actually auto-generates the G-code for you based off his, I don't know if it was Simplify 3D at the time, I'd have to look at it, but it's a consistent go-by that you can look at his results on a cube versus yours and see what looks wrong and then calibrate off from that. But it does sound to me, usually I do see it as Z binding, but if it looks pretty even and it's, let's say 10 millimeters or 15 millimeters tall, then we definitely have to adjust the Z steps. But basically, unless you bought like a monoprice printer, everyone's using pretty much the same Z rods out there, and someone will criticize me. I think it's 4 turns, something or other. I haven't looked at the measurement in a long time, but I believe it's 400 pulses per millimeter is the standard in Marlin. Someone can tell me down there. And then that should be good enough right out the gate. But especially if you're on a stock board, none of that should change. So I would also check the electrical connections. Rick Lennon, how to tell if an Arduino has gone bad in a Prusa i3? Usually a big hole burnt in it. Arduinos, for those who don't know, when you flash a firmware onto that board, that goes into, for the sake of right now, I'm going to call it read-only memory. It's not, but it's kind of like a hard-coded what they call firmware, where you can rewrite it, but it's not meant to be rewritten constantly, like, say, a hard drive or, say, computer memory. So, generally, your firmware is not going to go bad, or it's not going to corrupt in a specific spot. Usually, it's going to work, or it's not going to work at all. It's going to be dead in the water. Now, Rick, I'm wondering where this question's coming from, because there is something I can discuss, which is earlier versions of Marlin, and either it was a memory leak or a bad implementation of the U8G lib. Either way, it would cause the printer boards to run out of memory, and it would start corrupting the character libraries, and you get glitched out screens. For those of you who have a CR10 or an Ender 3, you know this all too well. If you do too long of a print sometimes without power cycling it, it can corrupt the display. It will keep printing, but you can't even talk to the printer. And if you plug in the USB cable, it resets because of all that fun 8-bit stuff we like to forget about. So, Rick, if it's not powering on, there's a good chance your chip is dead there. If it's powering on, doing its thing, but it's doing some wonky things, look and see which version of Marlin it's running. If it's running anything older than Marlin 1.1.8, I would definitely look into upgrading it. I know Joseph is really good at posting new firmwares for the Prussias, and I think you can flash it through Prusia Slicer. I'd have to check on my model here, but just make sure that's all up to date. You know, let me know down in the chat below what further is going on with it, and maybe we can look a bit deeper into it. Ben Brady talking more about the chip shortage. Yes, that's definitely a factor. Again, I didn't want to go too deep into the chip shortage because it's, you know, it impacts all of us day to day, but the technological reasons for it are numerous in measure, and especially for those of you who have had to look for a vehicle lately, you notice the vehicle shortages. It's because auto manufacturers are the cheapest and laziest companies when it comes to upgrading their fab systems and everything. Ideally, at the end of the day, they keep a vehicle design similar just long enough that it can save them money, but just short enough to force you to upgrade down the road when you can't service that vehicle. And I could go on for hours about right to repair. All I can say is please look into this, guys, because you know our world is changing quickly to this subscription model. You don't own anything, so please get up to date and educated on right to repair, and you know, fight for your rights on that. But when it comes to these fabrication issues, yes, all the fabs took during the pandemic took the opportunity to go and just redo their manufacturing processes to optimize it, to bring it up to modern times. But now, as a result, companies have to redo their R&D and designs to fit within this fab circle. And you know, I know many of you might be wondering, well, why hasn't some printer company come out and said we're going to make a processor like the Raspberry Pi, but make it designed for 3D printing on our board exclusively? The reason it comes down to is money. The cost to develop a brand new chip, even just to get the first one stamped, is about $250,000, and then it's 10 cents thereafter. So no company is willing to take that gamble. It's a mess. But that being said, really, if there's one message I can get to all of you about all this chip shortage, is order the parts you need for your printer before you think you need them. Make sure you got a few hot ends on hand. Make sure you have a few thermistors on hand. If you can find the bearings, just have a couple of bearings on standby. The wheels, you know, they can pop off, but have the bearings. Have a set of screws. Buy a screw kit from Amazon that covers you know, cylinder head M3 through M5 up to 16 millimeters in length, and that will cover you for most of the parts you need for a printer. Even a spare extruder assembly, it doesn't hurt to have one of them, especially when they're $10 or whatever a pop on Amazon. But the problem is, like, even right now, ordering stuff from China, you know, with 11/11 just passing, it's getting better. It's still 3 weeks-ish to get parts, but their prices are going up too because freight's going up. So just stock up in advance. Make sure you've got at least one spare because you don't want to be down for days. I do have a plethora of parts in stock, and we do at shopthefirstlayer.com, just kind of locally. So if you are stuck, you know, at least we have that for Saturdays and Sundays. But, you know, I can't predict if this is going to get better in 6 months, in a year, or anything like that. We just don't know. So, anyways, I could ramble on for hours about this, but yeah, please get your parts ahead of time here. Let's see what we got here. Film Factory. I'm modifying an Ender 3 to a, that's a good size bed, 500 mil. Use 2 standard 24-volt heat beds. Any thoughts on wiring for power, and 2 thermostats? I'll be printing PLA on mirror only. Okay, so, great question, and I'm glad you thought about the 24-volt. So the base power supply is not good enough. It's barely good enough for the bed that you have, to be honest. It's kind of skimping on by, and so we've seen companies starting to increase from like a 350 watt, 360 watt supply up to a 480, just to give it that little extra headroom. I'll be honest, I would not I would not go with stock beds on this, you know, standard 24-volt ones. I would go onto AliExpress, and I would, if you have the beds already, great, but I would get a silicone sheet custom cut for that size in your AC power, and then get yourself a temperature, a little PID controller on Amazon, just to control that bed. Now, because honestly, it's going to take you probably 22 minutes to warm it up, number one, and number two, it's going to be very hard to keep those two beds balanced in temperature. Marlin doesn't really do very well when it comes to multiple bed sources. You can set, you know, because it's not designed for that, right? It's designed for things like chamber temperatures and stuff like that. There's no, unless they've changed it in the last few Marlin revs, there's nothing that says, hey, I can define bed 1, 2, 3, and it's just a lot of switching. But if you get one of these silicone beds, we're talking maybe 50, 60 bucks US maybe for a guy to go and custom create one for you. All it is it's an electrical mesh between two pieces of silicone. I haven't torn down one in detail yet, but I mean, it's going to heat up way quicker, and it's going to do you way better to go that route. But if you do decide to go with the two base beds, I can't think of a pretty way of doing it, to be honest. I think you're going to, anything I tell you is going to be lower quality than having one master controlled temperature. And the reason for that is because, remember, PID is designed to try and encroach upon the set point, as we say, to try and keep it at that temperature point. But if you have two separately controlled beds, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to be balanced on that temperature. And even a 1 to 2 degree swing between those two edges could make or break your bed adhesion. Admittedly, you're going to go and, you know, if you have glass on there, it's going to radiate in there and help buffer that temperature a little bit. But trust me when I say the silicone is going to be way better for you. For those guys that didn't know, by the way, I'm sorry that I started this at 12:30 today, so we're going till at least 1:30 here. It's not going way overtime today. Let's see here. Catch up on everything. Yeah, try to find an LPC 1769. Yeah, that's the chip that's on the SKR 1.4 Turbo. Very hard to get a hold of. Any of these, generally very hard to get a hold of right now. And it's because they were not very common chips. They were only starting their manufacturing right during the beginning of the pandemic. And so I'm betting a lot of fab houses have changed it up, and we're going to see a new iteration. It might take a year and a half, but it's going to be hard getting these chips. Rick, I have two printers alike. I moved the job to second printer. Cura settings works normal. So if you have two inconsistent machines there, yeah, first I would check the firmware, and second of all, I would really check those acceleration values. Usually, let me see if I can pull up Cura and show you guys here. I'm so behind. I think I'm still running on Cura 4.1 or 4.10 here. Let's see if it'll even come up. For those of you who don't know, I upgraded to Windows 11, and magic things happen. You know, I've done 3 computers, 2 or 3 work great, but this one, something weird with desktop window manager that I'm still digging into. So let's see what we can pull up here. Cura 4.12, as you see, this is what happens when I don't watch any videos for a couple of weeks. I guess Cura 4.12 is out now. Okay, so let's bring this up here. Nope, not that one. There we go, that one. Okay, so here we got Cura 4.10. It should be the same. What you want to look into is if we go to our settings up here, printer, and manage the printers, go to machine settings. Sometimes there's G-code limiters up here of how fast it can go. Make sure there's nothing up here. Some of these things you're seeing is because I run Clipper on this particular machine, but sometimes a slicer, especially if you create a default one, let's say we add a Ender 3. Let's find here. Where's Creality, 3D, Ender 3. Doesn't matter if it's the Pro or not, but you can see when we add this, hopefully it doesn't freeze up too hard. And of course, it's in a micro little window down here. Let's see. And it's not going to let me resize. How helpful is that? Anyways, so maybe it's the CR10. They actually hard code in acceleration values. Yeah, it must be the CR10. The other one you want to look for is over on your settings over here. If we look up acceleration, and I highly recommend showing this filter. Under speed, you might notice acceleration control is checked off. If it's checked off, look at these values. I have them all hard-coded at 500. I've seen them as high as 9,000, and you do not want that. You know, for any kind of bed slinger printer, you definitely want to keep that between 500 to 1,000 max. Even 1,000, I find, can give you a lot of ringing. But set these all to 500, and you might find that the printer definitely moves a lot smoother. It will be slower, and the estimates for time will be right out the window. But it's going to make you have a better quality print. And, you know, unfortunately, it's something that as the growing pains of the 3D printing community go, there's a lot of assumptions made on things that don't work for everybody. This is why companies used to give default printer profiles, and why, you know, when Cura comes out with new versions and they add new printers, I do look at the notes on GitHub, and it tells you who submitted them. So if a company like Tiny Machines submitted a printer profile, good, I know it's great. If it's some user on GitHub I've never heard of, and I click on it and they have no information, I might be a little skeptical. You know, there's no... When you submit a printer profile to Ultimaker, for instance, the vetting process, they can't vet every single machine. So usually, as far as I've seen, you know, if someone submits something and there's no big complaints popping up or anything, they'll just go and push it into the code. What else we got here? Oh, yeah. Okay, I got to talk about this one, guys. Sorry. So, Sunlu Fila Dryer 2. Sunlu, I'm trying to advocate for you, even after Gen 1, which we don't talk about a lot. It's on my floor. Actually, here it is. We don't talk about Gen 1, because I had to do too much crap to make this thing go. I had to add insulation, I had to add fans, I had to add all sorts of stuff. It works okay. Apart from the fact, why do you not allow me to run this indefinitely? I can set up to 24 hours run, but I can't set it indefinitely. If you gave me a button for indefinite, I could even wire it into my printer and tell it run only when the machine is printing. God forbid. Sorry, I get a bit flared up when companies don't think about their products sometimes. Fila Dryer 2. I'm going to try and pull this page up. I think it goes live tomorrow. Before I get into this, I'm not telling you don't buy it. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is understand what it is and understand why it can work and why it might not work. I know that's a bit of a loosey-goosey answer here, but Fila Dryer 2. Let's see if we have a link. Okay. I got Sunlu's main site here, okay? So it's not the Kickstarter page, but I got the main site here. Let's look over this, and I'm going to tell you guys what I saw when I read through this a day or so ago when I got my email. So, shipping from Canada, intriguing. Sunlu's had a very big issue in the past with distribution from the Kickstarter. That's why it took so long for me to get my Fila Dryer, was because it got stuck in freight somewhere, and they were... Honestly, the thing that pissed me off was that they took it and said, all right, they're sitting in Vancouver, but we won't ship them out until the Kickstarter check clears, because we can't afford it or whatever. I'm sorry, you're a big enough company, Sunlu, you could have afforded just to get it out. And as a result, the first version was available on Amazon for next day delivery before many of us got it from the Kickstarter. So that was kind of a flare point. Now, that being said, we'll put aside everything about the first one. Let's just talk about number 2. So, what I did see is the 70 degrees. That is true. That is new. That you can now go up to 70 degrees Celsius, which was a huge bane for the first one. First one, you could only set it to about 55 degrees on the controller, and without the insulation upgrade, that it was akin to like 42 Celsius. So, kind of garbage, okay? They've also added a relative humidity measurement, which is a bonus. You know, we've been wiring in our own ones. So although, as I've mentioned before, the measurement's kind of moot, when it's heated up, it's always going to be like 10% or lower. You have to let it cool down and then actually see what it is at resting. But it's nice to have that. Material PLA, I don't care about set points, guys. I mean, if I can break it down and find out what each one is, that's great. The screen being bigger and on the side is definitely nice. But the biggest thing that they were talking about that I saw was that they've actually put the heating coil all the way around. What does that look electrically on the inside? I don't know yet. The old one that I've got here, the metal plate, if we take a look at it, all the heating occurred down here, okay? Down at the bottom. So underneath this metal plate, I'm not going to take it apart right now because that pissed me off too much last time. Ben Brady knows what it's like. There's a metal strip underneath here that's your heating coil, if you will. And then your thermistor that was measuring it, measuring the chamber temperature, you know, sitting inside here, was underneath the metal plate. And we'll see, right, kind of this blue tape up here with the little thing sticking out, that's where I moved mine to so I could get a more accurate internal temperature. It's also conveniently right underneath the discharge of this 5015 blower. So as it's pulling air around it, what that is going to see ideally is the coolest temperature within there for control to make sure we actually get it up to 55 degrees to dry filament. So wrapped all the way around, yes, great thing. Now, but as mentioned from Dominic, sorry, I'm going to pull your comment off here, but Dominic's right. There is no circulation fan, and this is something I don't understand, is in theory, okay, in theory, if you're printing very slow, your reel is naturally going to be rotating through this because you're feeding your filament from out from within the dryer. So in theory, it should radiate evenly, but unless you have a fan, you're not going to have this, you're only going to have natural convection. For those of you who have modern stoves, you may see there's a fan in the back. The reason the fan is in there is to force the air around the chamber to make it an equal temperature across the unit. Otherwise, all of your heat naturally radiates upwards, and a lot of stoves that don't have convection, for instance, have little vents, so it vents the heat out to try and balance it a little bit. But at the end of the day, you're going to have as high as a 20 to 30 degree differential from your top down to your bottom. So when these are sealed up and small, sure, that's going to be reduced. But, and I'll see if I can bring up some thermal images for you guys next time, but it's unfairly cooling, basically. You're going to have too much heat up here, too little heat potentially down here, and depending on where the temperature reading is, let's say if you're targeting for 70 degrees, down at the bottom here it might be 70 degrees, but at the top it's going to be 50 degrees. And the end result could be that your filament warps indifferently, right? It's not consistent. A $5 fan would have made this like a day one buy for me, because they did learn a lot. But you know what? I watched this video, and I probably won't get a copyright strike for this because, you know, all this good stuff. But, you know, you watch these videos here, and wow, it doesn't even look that good. There we go. That's better quality. It's all glam shots. I don't care. It's got a green ring running around it. I don't care. You know, that circling thing, that's just a practical effect. These are all just glam shots that don't show anything about what this darn thing does. We can see here, there is a clock timed, like a countdown timer with seconds. Is there any way to run it continuously? Oh, you know what? Actually, hang on. Let's see if I can pause this here. So they talk about all-around heating here. Well, that's what they did. They did exactly what they did with the first one here, but they added a second strip around the top. Guys, we could do that ourselves to the first gen one. And I'm just trying to look here, because, okay, so you see how they got all these holes along the top? That's no good. Because again, all you're going to do is radiate out unnecessary heat. We want to have a controlled temperature chamber for this. I'm sorry I get so mad about this, but after all that time and the nature of the redesign of this, how different it looks from the Gen 1, there's not a lot of quality of life things. They've just created a flashy thing that looks like one of those kids. Remember when you used to be able to get record toys as a kid? They were like little 8-inch plastic discs that played songs. That's what this thing looks like. I'm sorry. But, you know, here's a review that's in French, and they're featuring on their website with a a thinking face here. I didn't even look to see, and again, I'm not going to play it because I really don't want to get strikes here. Camino obviously did a review on this thing. Let's see. Some points may need to change before its release. Well, and this is what they're choosing to showcase on their website. I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to be getting one, so I highly encourage you guys to check out reviews. Oh, hey, look at that. He actually does it with a thermal cam. Okay, so please, I'll post the link to this. I know I don't normally share other channels, but check this one out. Don't jump in and buy this thing blindly, okay? Because you're also going to be waiting quite a while to get it. You're probably better to wait till it comes out on Amazon, and Sunlu's established enough they don't need a Kickstarter. That's a story for another day. Alright, bouncing way down through here. Sorry, guys. I've been kind of getting on rambles today here. Ben Brady. Yeah. Oh, they discontinued it in XP. You know what? I'm not surprised. Between you and me, guys, the LPC 1768 and 1769, when they ran beautifully, but they were prone to failures. I did see a lot of chips with burnt holes, notably on the 1.4 and the 1.4 turbo. So, I don't know, maybe NXP's making better chips. At the end of the day, I'm watching a lot with Clipper. I'm keeping my eye. That's my kind of project for this year to keep an eye on, because with how far they've gone with Clipper, at this point, you don't need these fancy I/O boards. And in fact, if you look at a printer board, all you really need is like a GPIO chip nowadays with some opto couplers, some opto isolators, and so forth to isolate the low voltage from the high voltage side. I have it in the back of my mind to look into building an interface board for a Pi so you don't have to buy a fancy board and all that. I think that, and someone's probably going to beat me to the market easily on that, but the need to have a high-end chip on a printer board is only necessary if you're not going to piggyback it with something like a Raspberry Pi or a computer to do those advanced computations. Even Marlin now, we haven't covered it, but in one of the last releases of Marlin, they added this thing called G6 direct stepping, which allows you to run Marlin in a mode akin to Clipper. So again, these are things we're going to keep an eye on, and we're going to see what the best benefit is. The machine behind me here is running Clipper, and it's not without issues. I mean, it is a much more advanced rabbit hole, but if you can dial it in right, you can get great things. Let's see here, what do I got? Yeah, DeWitt talking about Super Slicer. I haven't played with Super Slicer yet. I'm hoping to soon. Automatic temperature tower built in. There's a lot of things that are doing automatic with this. Clipper, for instance, you can actually just send it a model file, and you can set up staged parameters. So you'll notice this when you get into the resonance testing and all that, is that you can set a factor in Clipper with just one line of, we're going to call it G-code, but it's not G-code. One line in there that you can say every 5 layers, take your temperature and add 5 degrees or subtract 5 degrees. You can tell it every 5 layers, go and increase the flow rate to calculate your flow rates to see if you can visually see a difference. In this case, you can do it for acceleration. You can say every 5 layers, increase your acceleration by 100 millimeters per second to see when banding starts occurring. Same thing with junction deviation. Pretty much every factor in Clipper can be used this way. Super Slicer in itself, I'll check it out this week. I'll let you guys know what I think of it, because as I always say, more competition is better. Don't forget that. The Apprentice, hit the thumbs up. Yes, please, guys, do give us a thumbs up here. I'm not going to go onto the Super Chat bandwagon today there, but yeah, anything, likes help with YouTube, especially now that dislikes are gone. That's another story for another day. But any interaction that you give us on YouTube helps analytics, helps us be able to expose ourselves to new audiences and so forth. YouTube's algorithms are immense, full of depth, always adapting. So if you guys do like the content, give us a thumbs up. If you don't like it, since you can't give us a thumbs down right now, write it in the chat below. I've seen it where people are writing dislike, and that's the top comment with a bunch of thumbs up. You know what? Information like that helps us produce the content, determine if we're on the right path, or if we've gone completely off our rockers. We do, to an extent, produce content for ourselves these days, but we also produce it for you, and we love to answer any questions, any ideas that come up. My missing in action was because I was having printer nightmares, okay? This printer is printing for the first time in probably 8 weeks right now, so I'm very happy to say I think I'm back on track for that, and that's why you're going to see more content again from me here. Let's see here. Kawasaki, great question. Have you ever changed an axis movement rod and bearing system to rail type system? Sure have. Well, you know what? I'm not going to be able to focus it nicely right now, but the CR10 behind me here, I'll just hide your comment here. You can see on the bottom down there. Actually, you know what? We've got zoom technology. We're fancy folk here. Let's try this out. Whoa, there's a close-up. Let's see. That looks like a printer there. Let's see. Come on. Oh, I can't focus, really? Okay, let's... There we go. There's Mr. Ugly printing away there. And you can see right below it, there are my MGN 15 rails I have installed on this. I'm still on, for the X-axis, I am still on the belt system. But for the Zs, we've got two MGN 12Hs, if you will. So, yeah, we've got a few different things there. All right, let's fancy-pantsy zoom. Oh, wait. Hey, well, hello. There we go. Let's zoom. There it is. This camera, I got this camera from AliExpress, guys, so I apologize if it's... you know what? I got it because the picture is stellar, and I'm broadcasting through Streamlabs right now, so... StreamYard, sorry, so it's only 720p of what you're seeing, but this camera is actually 4K, so it's going to give us a lot more options in the future. I do have another 4K camera right here. Let me see if I can show that to you guys. OBS virtual camera. Part of the problem is all these cameras are called the same darn thing. This cable here. I've rewired a bunch of stuff, guys, too, so I apologize. It's not quite set up for broadcast yet again, but we are just about there. So let's... That's the problem, too, is I keep running out of USB ports here. You know what? I will save that for the next video, but I can show you I've got two 4K cameras right here. We can go over a bit of video production stuff and, what matters for photographing prints, as we talked about. But technology, I'm sorry. And this room is an absolute bombshell because I am working on lots of different renovations. You might see, I guess I can give you a quick tour there. I've got behind me, I've got these RGB strips I'm working on up here right now. I just designed a controller. Let's see if that will focus in there. I've designed a controller for the outside one for that. The second one right now is not working, even though they said it would, so I'm going to custom design that. All my toys behind me here, you'll see a bunch of Beast Wars stuff I stocked up on this past year, so I got to set up this staging for that, if you will. There's the focus with all those pores. Brilliant. 3D printing, sorry I'm late. Don't worry, I was late here today too. It's a Sunday, catching up on everything, so yeah. Hey, here's a quick one. And guys, I'm going overtime today because you're asking lots of awesome questions. Feel free to ask it. I'm in no rush to get out of here today. Can the CR10 be upgraded to direct drive printing? Absolutely it can. Do I recommend it? That varies day to day. But earlier in the show, we briefly spoke about this matrix extruder. And this one here is a clone of the Chimera, I believe. I got this one about 6 weeks ago, and I've been waiting to install it. And then I just found a metal plate on Amazon the last few days to mount a Chimera. So we're going to mount this on my... that way there. My Ender 5 here, because it is a bit clogged. It's got the OEM hot end, so I can't do anything apart from PLA on it. And I'll see how the weight impacts it. Weight is the #1 concern when going to direct drive. We've spoken about it before. It's the more weight you add, the lower your acceleration has to be. Otherwise, you have too much shaking. These aren't designed on CNC grade rack and pinion systems. Your belts still have a certain form of flexibility, and the harder you change direction, the more you stretch that rubber over time. Steel reinforced belts and stuff don't really resolve that, as we've found. So just slow it down, and you can do direct drive there. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm only about 20 minutes behind on these comments, so Yeah, Ben is saying you got the AC silicon bed heater. That's exactly what I'm going for. CR10S with a Titan, Arrow, and Volcano hot and works great. That's great. You know, the key is it's all about understanding the pacing of your machine. But the solution is don't do Kickstarter. Oh my goodness, guys! We've got stories about Kickstarters, and I think I've shown it before here on the show. The first Kickstarter I backed was a failed Kickstarter from some Canadians on a resin printer, and it's a story. Look up the Peachy printer on YouTube, and you'll find all sorts of lovely stories about how the co-investor supposedly ran off, stole the money, and built a house, and there's no legal recourse because he did it within the legal boundaries of the business. And Kickstarter is a donation platform that may or may not return for you. That's the key. You're not pre-ordering anything ever on Kickstarter. You are giving a donation to a firm for investment to produce said product, and in return, if it succeeds, and they can still afford to do it at the end, they will hopefully send you what you pre-ordered, okay? Don't do Kickstarter, please. There's no rush. There's no need to be on the bleeding edge of it. We got the Sunlu filler dryer, and the amount of work I've had to put into that, I probably could have bought an iBose. So, just, yes, Ben, I 100% agree, and I do reiterate that. Don't do Kickstarter if your intention is to pre-order a product. If your intention is to support a company that, and I don't want to use the term too good to be true, but let's say if you get a good discounted price on something that you would buy at the end, and you know it's an established company that's going to deliver it, then yes, go ahead, but there is no guarantee and there's no recourse if you do not receive your product. Has anyone used a Fetus Dragonfly BMS on an Ender 3 V2? I apologize because, you know, all these hot ends, there's so many of them out now. I personally haven't used the Fetus BMS. I think I've seen these online. They're stupidly expensive in Canada, I won't lie to you. They're like $150 Canadian for it, and it's, at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, it's a nice hot end, but it really is just a more enhanced V6 hot end that can do better flows. I know people harped on Triangle Lab for their Dragon hot end, but this stupid little hot end, I'm sorry, this is a great hot end, and I really wish they could sort out their legalities between them and Fetus. I agree there are some similarities, but they are definitely, if you were to look at them side by side, you could tell they're two different products. So I know it's a bit of a controversial thought on copyright and patent, being a person who owns a patent and is going through all that stuff. I know the challenges with it, but, you know, Fetus, yes, they went and defended their IP, good on them, but their products are very expensive. I mean, we're talking, when you talk about an Ender 3 V2, it's not just Fetus, right? The first one that was the big story was everyone wanting to put duet boards on an Ender 3. But when a printer is $300 US, $250 US, and you want to put a $150 US board into it, my question is why? Why not just go and buy the bigger printer then that has a better board? And it kind of is the same way with this, is what are you hoping to achieve with the Fetus on an Ender 3 V2? I think at the end of the day, you're going to find a better printer with an all-metal hot end out of the box for around the same price. But if you're investing into that, I know they have the heatsink that is, I'm going to call it Creality compatible, if you will, in which case you're going to have to go and you just bolt it in on your 2-bolt pickup points there. Make sure you get your wiring correct. Make sure you select your bloody thermistor correctly, because that gets a lot of people. And then if you have an ABL, you're going to have to make sure your bed heights are correct. If not, you're going to have to make sure your bed offset's now correct. If you have it, yeah, go for it. But is it worth the $100 US upgrade? Only if you're printing materials other than like PLA and PETG. If you have to get to the higher temp stuff, or you're trying to print that much faster, which on a Ender 3 and notably more so on a CR10, it's diminishing on results. I don't think it's worth it to jump the gun, to be honest with you. I'd rather see a $50 hot end that's better engineered, that maybe doesn't get you the same flow rate, but has better anti-clogging methodologies, or You know, even this new E3D hot end that we spoke about a couple weeks ago there, the one that's the nozzle and the heat break, it's all one piece. Although it's a catch-22 that when that one part breaks, you got to replace the whole piece, it's going to have less clogs. It's much better engineered. And that's what I want to see here. I don't think it's a good time to start experimenting with third-party hot ends until we see the success rates of this new E3D design, because I'm sorry, it's going to be cloned, you know, and I feel bad for them because they spend a lot of money on research, but it's going to be cloned, and sometimes you look at your morals and you say, yes, I want to support this business and buy proper, but some of us don't exactly have that money and they want to see if the technology works, in which case you buy the clone. I'm not here to tell you morally what to do, but from a functional standpoint, some of these clones have actually been superior to the originals sometimes, but many times they're worse than the original. Alright, just catching up here. Had anyone high wind rails in their ender and regretted it? No, but that being said, I haven't found anyone who got the money to buy high wind. I have been using Chinese rails, and I'm sorry to call them that, but that's really the going term. I've been buying the overseas, non-regulated, if you will, MGN 12H, 15H, 9H. I've still got them sealed over here, the ones from Robot Dig for my Voron build that are the anodized black MGN 9s, and they're all great. The key with rails is to understand how to condition them properly. You've got ball bearings that sit inside there. They need lubricant. If you go and drive your vehicle, after a certain amount of time, your wheel bearings can wear down, and if you don't address it soon enough, they can damage themselves a lot more. Usually it involves adding new grease, and your bearings are good, but if you wait too long and you bore through your bearings, then you got to replace the bearing. Same goes with linear rails. So when you buy a linear rail, regardless of where you buy it from, it comes with a type of lubricant designed to partially seize the wheels. And the reason it's that is because it's a shipping lubricant. It's meant to keep them in place and not allow them to move around. So when you get it out of the package, you might move it, it's like, this is really firm. And then as you move it more, it's like, okay, this is better, this is getting better. But you're never going to get the true performance out of that rail unless you do a proper cleaning of it. I have shot some video for it, I won't lie, I can't remember where I put it, but I think it's time I actually produce that content for you guys. If you buy rails, you need to clean them properly. Don't pull them off the slider if you can, because trying to put all those little bearings back in is a bloody nightmare. If you can keep it on there, you want to soak it in isopropyl alcohol, move it back and forth while it's in the alcohol to let that lubrication just kind of flow out into your basin, if you will. Move it back and forth as much as you can. You know, shake it out. If you can filter out, or if you can have a second bowl of isopropyl to put it in afterwards, fresh, just to clean it. Make sure it's all clean. Then get the proper type of lubricant, and this is, again, a little bit back and forth. I like to put machine oil in it. It's more fluid, so it has more of a tendency to flow out, but it just means I might have to refill it more often, but it prevents things from getting gunked up. Don't put white lithium grease or anything in there. It's going to bind up your wheel, or the bearings, and you know, as I said, when that stuff starts seizing up, even micro vibrations is enough to completely mess up your print designs. So it does take some time, but you can make those cheaper rails work better than the high winds if you take your time up front in cleaning them. Just quickly hopping around here. Lewis, I apologize. I have a print dry filament dryer with temps up to 75 degrees Celsius. That's expandable. What are your thoughts on that one? Good question. I haven't heard of that one. Let's bring it up here for everyone to have a look at. Let's see if I print dry. I always get a little worried when an entire company exists just to serve this one purpose. If their website will even come up. That's not very promising. Ah, there we go. A little bit slow. Maybe it's a bit more international than I expected. Okay, so here's the containers that they have. Dryer Pro. Let's take a look at this here. Okay. I haven't ever seen this one, I can safely say. But let's talk about rather than kind of critique the product or whatever, let's just look at this in general from a perspective of drying filament. So as mentioned earlier, the key to drying filament is a consistent temperature across your case and a good natural convection to keep that air moving around. At the end of the day, if you're really in a humid climate, you need to find a way to remove that air as it's heated, such as having the holes on the top, because otherwise you're just basically rotating steam around it. Here in Alberta, where it's so bloody dry, you don't need that. Now this one here, what we can see is we've got, in my mind, a lot of wasted space on that inside, but we can get more to that later. You got your 4 holes here, which are threaded bolts, which is good because if you have an open hole on a filament container that is not plugged, well, you can potentially reintroduce moisture. So this actually allows you to have a Bowden connector screwed in. You can actually have your filament sealed all the way into your extruder almost. And we've done that a few times here too. So I like that. The casing, I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, the plastic, it's okay, but plastic's not really very insulating at times, okay? If you're radiating a lot of heat outwards, that's just going to equate to excess wastage. Your room's going to be really warm. It'd be nice to have somebody actually just basically take a toaster oven almost and just retrofit it, because this is a lot of unnecessary injection molding just for a transparency and what equates to basically a dehydrator, because I'm pretty sure if we see an open shot of this, if they do show it, but I'm betting you they're not going to. It'll look the same as a dehydrator, yeah. Yeah, they're not going to show it, cool. In the bottom, usually it's just a coil and a fan, and it just blows hot air through. So they've got, let's see, spool adapters, double wall structure. Oh, okay. If they did go with double wall, then yeah, that might have some insulation properties, but it depends on what inert gas is in between there. I highly doubt it's probably just air, to be honest with you. Again, though, easily adjust the timer with presets. Okay. Built-in timer with a maximum time of 48 hours. Safety aside, I disagree with having a limit timer on there. I wish there, at least, give me a contact, an electrical contact, that I can put my own 2 wires in and tell it, hey, when I give you a signal, I want you to be enabled, and when I don't, I'll disable it, and I will take that safety into my own hands. Because sometimes prints are 14 days, and you're not going through a reel every 2 days. So I'd rather have it continuously run. I'd rather not have, I'd rather have my filament going into my extruder, and then into my hot end be the same temperature across the entire print. Things like that can impact your print quality. So, apologies, I'm kind of going off on a few tangents with this, but it's a nice looking machine. That is way too expensive for a filament dryer. It shouldn't even be close to that. And if we go to a site like AliExpress here, and I look up, a filament dryer, which, what you got to watch for is a lot of these companies end up rebranding a generic product and then saying, oh yeah, we invented this. 95% of the time I find it on these sites. You look at the Sunlu dryer here, and then look at the eSun. Pretty darn similar in a lot of the things, right? Soval, they've got a 2 version that, again, probably runs on the exact same methodology as these ones. They're all clones of each other. But this is Canadian pricing, guys. Okay, I'm going to change them into American pricing for a moment to give you a better context. So that dryer that we just looked at was $189 US. These are 45 to 60 American each. You could buy 3 of the Soval that has 2. You could buy 3 of these and still be ahead versus buying the other dryer. Now, it's not vetting the quality of the dryer, but in the nature of the technology here, that's just, it's expensive. It's unnecessarily expensive. You're using a $200 US product with a $300 US printer. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's just my opinion, though. Oh, Ricky B. My gosh, this is how far behind I am, guys. I'm reading the messages from 134 and it's 156 here. Ricky B, thank you for becoming a member. Sorry I didn't get that alert right away. Streamlabs doesn't give me the same pop-up that the YouTube chat does. So, welcome to the club. Here's a great question here from BDW. You encourage temperature towers for characterizing PLA/PETG. Does that also apply for ABS? Absolutely. ABS, although the nature of how you want to lay it down is a little different, you don't want to have cooling, you actually want to keep the temperature higher longer, the temperature tower still applies. But what you're looking for might vary a little. So temperature towers, when you're dealing with ABS, if your ABS is too cold when it extrudes, it's going to warp. And the first thing we refer to is delamination, which refers to when you have two layers that were molten when they came together, but maybe they weren't molten enough to blend together before they cooled to a natural state. So they'll press against each other, but they won't weld together. And so what you'll see is these layers start to curl up and they'll peel off themselves, and that's this delamination. ABS, you'll see that with lower temperatures. You'll also see that if you inadvertently forget to turn off your part cooling fan. ABS, make sure you got the enclosure, of course, because when you go to these hotter temperatures, there can be headaches. Make sure you have an all-metal hot end so you're not melting the PFTE liner that's inside that tube. Start at something like 280, 270, and go down in 5-degree increments. And what you want to find is that layer where it looks smooth, it doesn't have weird edges, and it's not peeling and bending on itself. Also make sure your bed is up to the right temperature, because most of ABS warpage I see is because the bed temperature is too low, and therefore, again, the material can cool down past its transition state and curl up because of the rate of its cooling. Alright, there we go. Let's see here. Do you have ball bearing fans in your store? I'd have to check. I have my own inventory, but I haven't added any fans into there. We spoke about DigiKey earlier on in the show, though. If you're looking for some good ball bearing fans, hit up DigiKey. Just type in the measurement size if you want a 30 by 30 or 40 by 40, your voltage. I do recommend Sunon. They're a very high quality brand of ball bearing fans, and they've got, let's see, do I have any here on the desk? Probably not at this moment. But they're, $8, $9 each. DigiKey, again, flat $8 shipping. Maybe you can find a few more parts in there to take more advantage of that shipping. But Gary, yeah, if you're in Calgary, send a message to Richard or myself there, and we can see what we have in our plethora of bins and good fun stuff there. Let's see here. Dominic Perseno, yeah. I have an air fryer convection that has a dehydration settings. Photo on the Discord, which we'll check out there. Costs $150 and hold 2 spools of filament. No mods. Perfect. I have a Salton dehydrator back here somewhere. $50 on Amazon. $50 Canadian. It holds 1 reel, but it does the job. I wasn't looking for something fancy or anything, and it works great. Oh, here's a great question. This is probably a good one to wrap it up because I'm talking like no tomorrow again. I have an Ender 3 V2 screen frozen after removing the fan cover. I restarted the printer and now I have a black screen. Any ideas? So that probably means that the ribbon cable came loose somewhere between the front and back. And unfortunately, I don't have an Ender 3 torn down in front of me right now to show you. But the Ender 3 has a single ribbon cable for the LCD, unlike the CR10. It uses what they call EXP3. So there's different ports. Yeah, I don't have any good ones here to show you, but there was a developing hierarchy about how to communicate with LCDs, and the Ender 3 went this route of using this EXP3. So the good thing is there's only one ribbon, and there's only one way for it to go in. So look for the ribbon cable that has, I want to call it the old parallel ATA standard, but it's a ribbon cable. That's 10 pins, if I recall. Make sure that's plugged in well in the board. And then on the back of your LCD, make sure it's plugged into EXP3 and just pushed in all the way. Actually, you know what? I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here because the Ender 3 V2, isn't that the one with the smart screen? I'm a little behind on Creality printers. I apologize for that. Let's pull it up and look because I will fully admit when I'm wrong. Yes, okay. This one uses the smart screen. Yes. So that's different than that whole thing I just told you. It's not a ribbon cable necessarily, but that cable basically provides power to the LCD. The LCD runs everything internally for its screen data, for the icons and all that stuff. And yeah, if that cable comes loose or is disconnected in a weird way, it's basically all or nothing, right? It'll either boot up and tell you, hey, no printer attached, which means there's something wrong with, some but not all the connections. Or if you're powering it up and it's just black, you probably just slightly unplug that connector going to that screen. So just check all your connections, make sure they're all connected, make sure hopefully a cable didn't pick up and get clipped off. You can get replacement cables, but I would just check those two connections, make sure that's good. Well, I think I actually managed to catch up on all these questions, guys, and thanks for staying late with me today. I know we had to miss last week due to, I called it, and it threw people off, the circadian rhythm. It's definitely worthwhile searching up because it can, I did find it changed my world when I understood how to sleep properly. But, yeah, this clock change has been a little hard this time around. It gets dark around 5 o'clock here, which is kind of weird. Definitely makes you feel tired early in the evenings, but I think we're good now. Richard, he's got some flu-like symptoms, so I'm hoping he's feeling better this week. I don't believe our episode went out either. It's been a bit chaotic, so we're ramping up the content here. We're not MIA. We're getting ready for the big Christmas rush, and I was going to talk about this today. Maybe we'll save it more for next week, but now is a good time to start prepping all your Christmas printing because we are like 6 weeks away. It's coming up quick. But otherwise, yeah, thanks everyone. I'm just going to bring up some of the comments. Ben saying thanks. Tim here saying thanks. Cortex TC saying thanks. Yeah, longer shows are always good. Sundays are a little bit of a weird one. We moved it here because we wanted to go out and do things on Saturday nights, and sure enough, look what happened with the world, and now that's not the same as it was 18 months ago for going out and doing things. So, if you guys like the longer show, the biggest thing is we'll stay going if we have good questions coming in and all that. We had a couple slow weeks there that we were stretching out, so please ask your questions in the chat as we go along with these shows, and if the questions are there, we'll stick around and answer them. That's what we love to do here. Otherwise, yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up for this week. We will be seeing you next Sunday here. Same time, 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, which, again, my math is a bit off here probably, but 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And we'll go through and answer all your questions live here. You can always throw it in the chat. In the interim, you can always go to our Facebook group, facebook.com/thefirstlayer. Join there, ask your questions. It's actually been a little quiet the last few months, so I'd love to see your questions popping up again. We can try to answer them off schedule there. And then, of course, we have our episodes coming out Saturday, health permitting. But as you can see, this room, once I get this all together here, we're going to have a lot more content coming down the line. So until then, thank you everyone for joining me, all of our members here. I'll just quickly, I'm going to grab a few here. I apologize if I missed you here, but Ricky B, Gary T, Dennis Kelly, Cord XTC, Dominic Versetto, just quickly scrolling through here, Mac CJ. Thank you, all of you, for being members and supporting the channel through all these fun, tough times. Anything helps. If you want to become a member, you can hit the join button below, and we do member live streams and little tidbits and extras to give you a little something out of your money, because that's what it all comes down to here. But likewise, if you can leave us a like, as I've mentioned, you can't leave us a dislike anymore, so tell me in the comments you don't like me. But, any kind of feedback helps us with these YouTube metrics and get ourselves exposed to other users that may not come across our content natively, so we definitely appreciate any and all feedback. But regardless, I could keep talking here. I'm going to go and enjoy my Canada Dry here, maybe get a quick snack, maybe produce some content today. So we will see you all on Saturday with our next live video, or our next video coming out, and then on Sunday with our next live stream. But until then, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. I hope you guys are all staying safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.